One of the most misunderstood aspects of love, especially when it comes from a woman who's afraid to show it, is how much louder her actions speak than her words ever will. We live in a world obsessed with verbal confirmation. We want the I love yous, the long texts, the romantic confessions. But love doesn't always sound like a declaration. Sometimes it moves quietly, hidden in the spaces between her words, tucked inside the things she does when she thinks no one is noticing. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. You'll mistake her love for indifference because she never says it out loud. But the truth is, some women love in silence because that's the only kind of love they've ever known to be safe. When a woman is scared to show her feelings, her love takes on a different language. It's behavioral. It's deeply intuitive. It lives in the details. You might not see grand gestures or hear bold proclamations, but you will feel it if you slow down enough to see what's actually happening underneath the surface. She remembers the things you casually mention. Maybe you told her once that your mom's birthday is coming up, or that you haven't been sleeping well lately. And days later, she brings it up. She asks how your mom is doing, or if you've tried that herbal tea she read about. These are not random acts. This is how a guarded heart tries to speak. It's how she signals, you matter to me, without saying it directly. Because for her, saying it outright might expose a tenderness she's been taught to protect. What you'll notice too is her consistent presence. She's there, not always loudly, but reliably. Maybe she checks in after a long day, or sends you something she thought would make you laugh. She offers help when you don't ask for it. She creates space for you to be yourself. This isn't her trying to be nice. It's love masked in practicality. She's showing up for you in the only way she feels safe enough to do. And while it might not be obvious to someone chasing fairy tale romance, it's incredibly deep, because it's intentional. She is choosing to show up for you. Now here's the thing. When someone is afraid to show their feelings, they often anticipate being rejected for them. Maybe she's been vulnerable before and it cost her. Maybe she grew up in a space where love had to be earned or worse, hidden. So now she performs it quietly, hoping you'll notice but too afraid to demand that you do. She's not playing games. She's trying to preserve herself. And if you respond with gentleness instead of pressure, her guard will begin to lower. There's also something profoundly psychological happening here. According to attachment theory, people with avoidant or anxious attachment styles often struggle with expressing love directly. For women especially, love can be complicated by layers of cultural conditioning that teach them to wait, to be chosen, to not be too forward. So instead they give in ways that feel safe. And safe for them often means subtle. It's a quiet kind of love, but it's love nonetheless. Philosophically speaking, there's a certain kind of humility in this kind of love. She's not loving you for show. There's no audience, no performance. It's not transactional. It's not loud or demanding. It's in the background. Steady, warm, and present. And that's a rare kind of love because it comes from depth, not display. But of course, it's easy to overlook, easy to misread. We're conditioned to think love has to be obvious to be real. But I would argue the opposite. The most powerful kinds of love aren't the ones that shout. They're the ones that whisper, day after day, in the way someone holds space for you, chooses you, honors your emotional world, even when they can't articulate why. So if you're in a situation where you suspect she might love you but is scared to show it, don't just listen to what she says. Watch what she does, how she shows up, how she responds when you're not okay. How she protects your time, your peace, your dignity. That's the language of a heart learning to trust. That's someone standing at the edge of vulnerability, hoping you'll see her without her needing to explain herself. And this is where your role becomes pivotal. If you're impatient, if you need everything to be expressed in your language, you may never understand hers. You might walk away thinking she didn't care, when really she was doing everything she could to love you safely. The question becomes, can you slow down enough to learn her language? Can you love her in a way that makes it safe for her to stop hiding? Because here's the truth, some of the most beautiful love stories never begin with fireworks. They begin quietly, with two people willing to pay attention, to read between the lines, to notice the gestures that go unseen by others. And that kind of love, The kind that doesn't need to prove itself to the world is often the most enduring. So, if you've been wondering whether she loves you but is just scared to show it, look closely. The answer might already be there, hidden in the small, consistent ways she chooses you every single day. Now, let's talk about something that confuses most men. When she suddenly pulls away, you were connecting. The energy was there, the moments felt real, and then out of nowhere, she creates distance. Maybe she becomes cold, unavailable. She stops texting first, takes longer to reply, or avoids conversations that used to flow effortlessly. And if you're not aware of what's truly happening beneath the surface, you'll interpret it as disinterest. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Often, the exact moment she begins to feel something real is the same moment she gets scared. She retreats, not because she doesn't care, but because she cares so much it terrifies her. We tend to forget that love, for many people, isn't just exciting. It's risky, especially for women who've been wounded before. A woman who's been emotionally betrayed, abandoned, gaslit, or made to feel too much learns to associate vulnerability with pain. She learns to survive by withholding, by keeping parts of herself tucked away so tightly even she can't always access them. So when real emotional intimacy begins to emerge, it doesn't feel safe. It feels dangerous. And her natural response is to create emotional distance, not out of manipulation, but out of self-protection. She wants to love, yes, but only if it won't cost her the parts of herself she's worked so hard to rebuild. From a psychological standpoint, what's happening here is often a clash between desire and fear. She desires closeness, connection, trust, but fears the consequences of being truly seen. This fear can be rooted in early attachment wounds or past relationships where openness led to betrayal. So now, whenever love starts to feel real, her nervous system responds the only way it knows how. It shields her. It shuts down to avoid further damage. So what looks like detachment is actually an emotional firewall. Her mind's way of saying, last time you let someone this close, you got hurt. Be careful. And until she feels safe, that wall is going to stay up. Now here's where many men make the mistake. They take that distance personally. They assume she's lost interest. They get reactive, push harder, or worse, they shut down in response. And the moment you mirror her withdrawal, you validate her fearing that love equals loss, that closeness always ends in disconnection. This creates a feedback loop where both people are retreating, neither feeling secure enough to break the cycle. But someone has to. Someone has to understand that emotional distance doesn't always mean absence of love. It often means presence of fear. Let's go deeper. Philosophically speaking, fear and love are not opposites. They're intimately linked. Love is the most vulnerable emotion a person can experience. It asks you to risk being seen, to risk being rejected, to risk being hurt. And that risk is precisely what makes love so beautiful and so terrifying. When a woman creates distance, it's not because she doesn't feel. Often, it's because she feels too deeply, and she doesn't yet know whether those feelings are safe in your hands. This is especially true for emotionally intelligent women. Women who are aware of their patterns, their pasts, and their triggers are often more cautious, not less. They've done the inner work, they know how much they have to offer, and they won't open themselves up to anyone who hasn't proven themselves emotionally grounded. So before she shows you her heart, she will test the waters with silence, with retreat, with distance, not to punish you, but to observe. Will you chase me blindly? Will you demand answers? Or will you hold steady? Because here's the paradox: when she pulls away, she's not looking for pursuit. She's looking for safety. She needs to know that if she lets herself feel, she won't drown. She needs to know that her emotions won't overwhelm you, scare you off, or be used against her. That's what emotional security looks like for someone who's been afraid to love out loud. So if you're serious about her, if you sense that love is there, hiding underneath her armor, your job isn't to pressure her into opening up. It's to hold the space for her to come closer at her own pace. It's to create emotional conditions where vulnerability becomes less of a threat and more of a gift. That might mean leaning in with curiosity instead of confrontation, asking how she's feeling instead of accusing her of pulling away. It might mean giving her room to process, while gently reminding her that you're still there, not to fix her, not to force her, but to be a steady presence in a world where most people disappear at the first sign of discomfort. And here's the truth. Not every man is capable of this. Not every man is emotionally mature enough to hold space for a woman who loves with fear. But if you are, you'll find that her distance wasn't rejection. It was a test of emotional safety, a quiet plead. Can I trust you to love me even when I'm scared? Can I fall into you without losing myself? If the answer is yes, then something powerful happens. Her walls don't just fall. They choose to fall. And that's a love built on trust, not performance, on mutual understanding, not pressure, on depth, not display. So the next time you feel her slipping away, ask yourself, what is she protecting? What story from her past is being reactivated by the closeness we're creating? And can I love her enough to let her come back in her own time? Because sometimes the one who distances herself the most, peep, is the one who feels the most deeply. She's not walking away from love. She's just making sure it won't hurt her this time. There's one sign that stands out the most when a woman loves you but is afraid to show it. She gives you access that no one else gets. And I'm not talking about physical access, or time, or presence. I'm talking about emotional access. The kind of access that reveals her depth, her wounds, her values, her real story. The side of her that isn't curated for the world, the part she usually hides, even from herself. When a woman is scared to fully express her love, she doesn't always say, I love you. What she does instead is let you into her inner world, slowly, cautiously, but deliberately. She offers you parts of herself that are sacred, vulnerable, sometimes even raw. It might come as a quiet confession in the middle of an ordinary conversation, or a memory she's never told anyone, because it still stings when she revisits it. You'll notice she begins to trust you with her truth. And for a woman who's used to holding her emotions like a secret, this is no small gesture. This is love, just delivered in a language she's still learning how to speak. Think about what emotional intimacy really means. It's not just about sharing facts or laughing at the same jokes. It's about being seen fully, without defense, without performance. When she opens up to you, not in ways that are polished or practiced, but in ways that feel uncertain, unfiltered, it's a sign, a powerful one. It means she feels something real, something worth the risk of being misunderstood or rejected. That kind of openness is her way of testing the waters. Can you hold this part of me without turning away? Can you meet my honesty with presence, not judgment? This is where many men fail to see what's actually happening. We've been conditioned to think of emotional access as casual, like it's just part of getting close to someone. But for many women, it's a terrifying leap, because what she shares with you, she has probably been shamed for in the past. Her fears, her dreams, the chaos behind her confidence. She's used to being strong, self-contained, maybe even aloof to the outside world. So when she starts opening up, you're not just seeing a new version of her. You're witnessing a side that very few, if any, ever get to know. And here's the paradox. She might still act like she doesn't want anything serious. She might make jokes about love, pretend she's fine being alone, keep things light in public. But if you listen closely, you'll notice the cracks, the unspoken longing, the careful ways she makes sure you're okay, the concern in her eyes when something feels off. She doesn't show it directly because she's still afraid to name it, but she's giving you clues. And emotional access is the biggest clue of them all. This pattern is deeply rooted in psychology. We all have core attachment needs, the desire to be seen, known, accepted, and loved. But if her past has taught her that expressing those needs leads to pain, whether through abandonment, betrayal, or disappointment, she'll suppress them. Not because they're not there, but because showing them feels unsafe. So instead of saying what she feels, she gives you what she can: access, honesty, pieces of her inner life that are still tangled with fear, but shared anyway, because some part of her believes you're different. That maybe this time she won't have to pay for being open. And that's the philosophical heart of this dynamic. She's not loving you the way the world teaches us love should look. She's not performative. She's not overly expressive. But what she is doing, what she's offering, is real. It's her unpolished truth, which, let's be honest, is far more valuable than hollow words or temporary affection. She's trying to love you from the inside out, even if she's still figuring out how to do it without losing herself in the process. So the question is, what do you do with that access? Do you see it for what it is? Or do you miss it because it doesn't come wrapped in the language you're used to? Because when she lets you in like that, she's not asking for you to fix her. She's not even asking you to say the right thing. What she's really asking is, can I be this open with you and still be safe? That's the litmus test. And how you respond will shape everything. If you meet her openness with patience, with non-reactivity, with empathy instead of analysis, you don't just gain her trust. You earn something far rarer, her true self. Not the version the world gets. Not the surface charm, but the real her. The one who's still healing, still learning, still scared, and still trying anyway. This is what makes love so profoundly human. It isn't about perfection. It's about permission. Permission to show up flawed, to risk connection, to be deeply known and still held with care. When a woman gives you emotional access before she gives you her full heart, what she's doing is saying, I'm not ready to give you everything, but I want you to see who I really am. That's not just vulnerability, it's courage in motion. So if you see this happening, if she starts sharing her fears, her stories, her quieter truths, don't ask for more, don't rush it. Don't try to name what she's not ready to say. Just honor it. Sit with it. Because love, especially from someone who's afraid to show it, isn't something you extract. It's something you earn, one moment of trust at a time. And when you can recognize that emotional access as love in disguise, you begin to see her. Not just the version she performs, but the one she's trying to become in your presence. That's where the real connection lies. Let's move into something that's incredibly nuanced, but crucial to understand her jealousy and protectiveness. Now, I know that word, jealousy, often comes with negative connotations. We hear it and immediately associate it with insecurity, possessiveness, or emotional immaturity. But here's the truth most people overlook. When a woman is scared to express her love openly, her jealousy doesn't always show up in the dramatic, obvious ways. It's subtle, it's quiet, and it's almost always misunderstood. But if you look closer, her protectiveness over you, her environment, and the space she shares with you, it's one of the most telling signs that she feels something deeply, even if she hasn't admitted it yet. You see, jealousy isn't always a red flag. Sometimes it's a mirror reflecting the depth of her emotional investment, an internal alarm that sounds when something she values is perceived to be at risk. And if she loves you, if even a part of her is quietly forming a bond with you, then your attention, your presence, and yes, even your emotional availability matter more than you realize. But because she's still afraid to fully express those emotions, the only way they leak out is through guarded reactions, slight shifts in her tone when you mention another woman's name, a hesitation in her response when she notices you getting too close to someone else, or the subtle way her energy changes when she feels displaced. That's not irrationality. It's attachment in disguise. And it's important to note that her jealousy isn't rooted in control. It's not about ownership. It's about fear. A fear that she's starting to care too much, and that caring might end up costing her. So when you trigger that fear, intentionally or not, you begin to see traces of her emotional protectiveness. Not because she thinks she has you, but because she's scared of losing what she hasn't even fully claimed yet. That space between emotional desire and emotional restraint. That's where this kind of jealousy lives. This behavior is more common than most people think, especially in emotionally intelligent women who've been hurt before. These are women who don't allow themselves to fall easily. They are cautious, measured. They want love, but not at the expense of their boundaries or self-respect. So instead of reacting explosively, they react subtly. They won't confront you head-on about their feelings, but you'll feel the tension, a change in the rhythm of your conversations, a new distance that wasn't there before, maybe even a passive withdrawal. That is how a guarded heart copes, with calculated silence instead of confession. And here's what's fascinating from a psychological lens. These micro-expressions of jealousy aren't just emotional, they're biological. Studies show that when people develop attachment, particularly romantic or emotionally significant ones, our brains become wired to track perceived threats to that bond, It's part of our survival instinct. And while some people externalize it more visibly, others internalize it, turning that fear into protectiveness, caution, or even temporary emotional detachment. But what separates healthy emotional sensitivity from toxic jealousy is self-regulation. And this is what you'll notice with a woman who loves you but is scared to show it. She's constantly managing her reactions internally. She won't sabotage your relationships or demand explanations. She won't create drama, but she will feel. She will observe. And if she starts pulling away or emotionally protecting herself more fiercely, it's because she feels like her heart is getting ahead of her mind, and that terrifies her. Philosophically, it speaks to a deeper truth. Love, in its purest form, always brings a level of risk, and the more a person tries to love without losing themselves, the more they'll oscillate between openness and defense. It's a dance between desire and dignity, between vulnerability and self-preservation. And jealousy, when it arises in this context, is simply the friction point between what she feels and what she fears. You may ask, but why not just be direct? Why not just say what she feels? And the answer lies in trust. Emotional expression requires a sense of emotional safety. If she doesn't yet feel safe enough to show her love, then she certainly won't feel safe enough to reveal her fear of losing it. So instead, she keeps it in. You'll see it in the small ways she becomes more distant, or the way her questions start to have a deeper tone behind them. She's not interrogating you. She's trying to understand where she stands in a space she hasn't been invited to claim. So if you sense that she's feeling protective, or that there's a quiet tension when you bring up other women or potential threats to your bond, don't dismiss it. Don't call her jealous. Don't mock it. And definitely don't use it as leverage. What she's actually revealing is a glimpse of how deeply she feels, even if she's still unsure how to let those feelings out. And this is your opportunity, not to manipulate, not to test her, but to meet her with clarity, to affirm her without playing games, to give her the emotional reassurance that she doesn't need to compete to be seen, that you notice her even when she's silent, that you value her even when she doesn't ask to be. Because here's the truth. When a woman is falling for you and afraid to say it, her protectiveness is not an obstacle. It's an invitation. It's her way of asking, is it safe for me to care this much? And if you can answer that question not with words, but with presence, consistency, and emotional maturity, you'll unlock a part of her that very few ever get to reach. At the end of the day, love isn't about eliminating all signs of fear. It's about building something strong enough to withstand it. And when you recognize that her protectiveness isn't weakness but a quiet act of courage, you stop fearing her walls and start appreciating her fight. Because sometimes the woman who seems guarded, detached, or quietly jealous is simply the one who loves you most fiercely. She's not trying to hide her love. She's trying to protect it.